you just get to give people things they don't know that they want or need. You get to just surprise people and in turn surprise yourself. I think I just enjoy the sharingness of hospitality.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good wee hours of the morn. Whenever you find me in your ears, this is Danny Valent and Dirty Linen is the name of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I am based in Melbourne, Australia, and bring you food chats, people who obsess about food as much as I do, and probably about as much as you do. There is never any shortage of topics to discuss, things to dig into, stories to unravel. And I am really excited about today's conversation. Heidi Modra is a restaurateur who has become an employee. And I'm so excited to talk about this transition, how she has carried her skills and experience from one venue to another in quite a different role. Heidi, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hi, thanks, Danny. Thank you for having me.
Last time I spoke to you, you were the restaurateur, the owner, the founder of Pinotta, a beautiful restaurant in Fitzroy North, an inner suburb of Melbourne. And now I find you as the manager of Ophelia, a cafe in Westgarth, not that far away, but you're an employee now, not an owner. I'm excited to talk to you about this big change.
It has been a very big change. I think on paper it looks like a very big change, but in reality it's just a little subtle shift of space that I work in. I feel like I'm surrounded by a very similar community of people, so being in a very neighbourhood space. I see lots of my regulars, which is a delight every day, so I don't feel too far from Pinotta, but at the same time just far enough away to know that I'm somewhere else and adjusting to changing how that work life looks, which has been a radical thing to do, but one that I'm embracing every day.
Change is always big and, it's cause for celebration, but there can be grief as well. Some changes we decide upon and others are forced upon us. Tell me about, maybe put Pinotta in context for people who weren't lucky enough to go there and then talk about why you decided to call time.
Okay. Well, Pinotta was my little baby, really. It was this place that I opened almost on a whim 14 years ago and became pretty much centre stage in my life. And I think from what people tell me whenever I see people stop me in the street almost every day to say a kind word about Pinotta and the place it has in their hearts, I think it became a very important place for a lot of people in my Fitzroy North community. It was a really lovely testament to, I think, hospitality in that giving of yourself to making someone else's day better and providing a place of respite from whatever else is going on in their worlds. I think we did that incredibly well. And at the same time, we brought some of Melbourne's best chefs to the table as well. We were very lucky with the people we got to work with, and it was a real treat. I do miss all of that. However, I think I definitely instigated the change. It was more of a 12-month plan of shifting my life. And it did take a long time to decide to make this. It was a very heartbreaking decision at the time. But it has turned out to be a really important decision. I made it because I needed certain things to shift. I needed to have my personal life back. I needed to have space in my life for other endeavours. And now that I have found myself in that place, I'm finding space for all the other things I'd like to do. But there was definitely a moment of grief when Pinotta's doors closed. It hit me much harder than I anticipated. And I spent a good couple of weeks really not leaving the house because I didn't want to have to talk about how sad it had made me feel. But now I'm really open to engaging with the whole conversation around the restaurant and its history and its journey and all the things it meant.
Wow, that's really so moving. Because I can feel your deep connection to the place. You know, as we discussed when I wrote a review of Pinotta, that's the only restaurant you've worked in. That was, you dove into hospitality headfirst as a business owner. And now 14 years later, you're in your second workplace, which is quite extraordinary.
Yes, and it has been a very steep, well, not a steep learning curve. I imagined it was going to be more dramatic than it has been. The hardest thing about being an employee now is managing myself. As a business owner, you wake up and you're thinking about what you have to do, and you probably collate lists overnight, and you wake up ready to go, and you just go and get stuff done immediately. And having to hold myself back every day from doing that has been difficult, but I am determined to work, a rostered shift and a rostered day, and to not become an employee who treats the venue like I'm an owner. It is enlightening to work for other people where we have at Ophelia, they're one of 5 venues that this group owns. There are 3 owners, and they all have very strong opinions and strong ideas and very calculated offerings for the group. And I appreciate each and every one of them because they're all very dynamic and amazing. But having the opportunity to work within a structured space is really, it's like a safety net that I didn't have when I owned my own business. It's nice to see that. I think possibly I created that in my own way at Pinotta as well, but having never seen it in real life, I never knew if I was doing a good job or not. So the reflection on that has been quite good. So trying to define my own space as an employee has been hard, but it has put some good perspective on what I did achieve at the same time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So one of the owners of Yoke Group is Kieran Spiteri, who's a return guest on Dirty Linen. We love having a chat with Kieran and his great experience in hospitality. He did it the traditional way where you work in hospitality for ages, work across different venues, build up your experience and then become an owner. Like, it's so interesting that you've landed with him and his business partners, but you've done it the other way around. So it's almost like, you're working in a business where you can reflect on what you were doing in your own. And I don't know, does it make you think, tell me about some of the things you're like, yeah, I did that really, really well. And maybe some of the things where you're like, okay, I didn't know that I could have done it like this.
I think my management style of people is very unique. So it's good to come into a place where there's, whether they have a defined management style, but there's a lot more process in place. I'm quite intuitive about how I handle training and staff. And I think coming on board here, I'm bringing a certain level of that. I did have a lot of procedure and protocol at my restaurant, but we imparted a lot of knowledge. We probably never referred back to it all the time. It was kind of an innate thing. And I guess the beauty of that was I had such long-term staff at Pinotta. We all knew what we were doing and we worked so well with one another. So coming into Ophelia and training people and having the structure for that has been a new thing. I do really love that I get assistance with stuff. And I like to think that I was always there to assist my staff at Pinotta in the same way. But maybe sometimes I wasn't as much of a manager as I could have been. I probably just became part of the team almost every day. I think it's good to have structure in a business, and maybe that's something that I didn't do as well as I could have.
It's interesting. I think you're also perhaps explaining why the business was so tiring, because the way if you didn't have, I guess, formal procedures or structures that you could hand over to people and you could go off for a holiday, or, not have be compiling those lists in the middle of the night. It's definitely a very common peril. Well, I mean, it's the peril and the beauty of being an owner of a restaurant, from my outside perspective.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I don't know that I've actually thought about it in that way, but I really held all the knowledge in my head. And when you do that, it's very hard to hand over to anyone else. And that would have been the most exhausting part of Pinotta. And I think it ended up being the reason why I did decide to sell, because I couldn't ever leave it. And that was not only from the management side of things, it felt like Pinotta had become a space where people expected to see me every day, and that was becoming just as exhausting as the management of the whole business. So that was a lovely thing, but I I really needed to step away. And every time I did, I felt compelled to come back immediately. So you hit the nail on the head. Having a management style and a process for everything means you can step aside. I've learned that lesson.
It's, oh my goodness, just it's so emotional. Restaurants are so emotional. Like, I mean, I know that if I walk into that restaurant and there's such an engaged owner, you do want to see them. I'm sorry, but I do. And I also understand that is a person who must have a life outside of those four walls. But it's such a tricky one. What about the business side of it, Heidi? Like, how hard is it to run a smallish independent restaurant these days?
I would say it's very hard. It's just, in the whole time I had Pinotta, it never got easier in any of the years. I think every year something new came up that made it more difficult, whether it was, and all of these things are so appropriate, but all of these things are appropriate for businesses to have to do. But as a sole business owner in a small business, when the margins are so tight, it's very hard to accommodate all the changes all the time and be on top of all the things that you need to do regarding getting people paid appropriately, which is something we always did, but it always was another thing you had to think about. And you're taking on the bookkeeping and accounting role on top of being the owner, on top of being the front of house host. So all of those things together are really tough. The amount of tax you have to pay as a small business is extraordinary. You're so intent on employing people and giving everyone quality of life, making sure they have the right time off to spend doing the things they want to do. And it's always the small business who supports all of those people, but it feels like we get taxed at every opportunity, even though we're just doing something that is the backbone of most small villages. That pressure, I think, was the hardest to do. As a small business, the margins on things are tight. You don't have the volume. You don't necessarily have the control over things as the larger businesses do. Everything becomes a bit more personal and heartfelt, which adds its own layer of intensity to what it is that you're offering, I think. But small business right now, I think it's the hardest it's ever been. When we came out of COVID, salaries had gone up enormously. Cost of goods ended up going up enormously, and we sort of managed that for a little while. And then when the interest rates hit, I think that really took its toll on the way customers spent money and where they spent it. And you couldn't quite get the margins to work in our favour, and you can never determine the wave of where people are going to dine that week. And I have the most consistent following of customers. We couldn't have had a more supportive community and sort of base of people that would come in just to make sure that we stayed open. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. But even with all of that, even with Philippa Sibley as the head chef, who was remarkable, we still struggled. And I think that's just the nature of small business in these times. I know that it will improve. I think for me, I was just it just became too overwhelming in my life. It became the everything, and I didn't want that anymore.
How much of a relief is it for you to have a salary, a certain amount of money coming in?
It's a huge relief. It's just something I don't think about anymore. I don't wake up wondering how everything will get paid. Obviously here, I'm a restaurant manager here, and I do have to manage budgets and rosters and staffing and the amount of things I buy each week. I have a budget for, and we watch that very closely here, which is a really wonderful thing. I'm happy to do that for someone else because they give me the time to do it. When you do it in your own business, it's often the thing that, well, for me, it became the thing that was last on the list because I was so dedicated to keeping customers happy on a personal level. And maybe that's where my business fell apart a little bit. Not that it failed, it just wasn't. I was more in tune with what people needed and probably not as, I didn't enjoy looking at the figures every week because it was so depressing. So it became quite difficult to do.
Yeah, that sounds so that sounds so challenging, and to be sort of shouldering that load as a sole owner must be immense.
Yeah, and then it has an impact everywhere. It has an impact on your personal life, on your friendships, because it's a weight. I think when people come and see me here, and the thing they say to me the most is that I just look lighter, and I think it is a real genuine thing that I am not carrying the burden of 100 thoughts in my head at every opportunity that they can sneak in during the day of worrying about the things. It's just the level of worry and anxiety has lifted immensely. That's a nice thing.
So going back to those 2 weeks where you didn't leave the house after you closed the door, like, was there relief? Like, was there grief? Like, what were you thinking and feeling?
I think that was grief. It took a long time for the sale to actually happen. And the whole way through, I felt very on top of managing how I felt about things, managing how my staff were coping, managing how, certain customers who I was telling about these things. I felt like I'd managed the process so I wouldn't have grief when I closed the doors. But it's such an empty space when you've gone from every day being filled with, half of your neighbourhood coming past for a hug and a chat every day, and then you just don't have that anymore. Pinotta really it wasn't my personality, but it certainly identified me. And when I left, I just didn't really know where to go or who to talk to or what to talk about, because everything had been restaurant related. And I stayed at home and I'd cook a lot. My freezer's very full. And I read and I sat in the sun and I tried to do some gardening and just tried to, I guess, disperse some of that energy into other things. But it was definitely a grieving process unlike anything I'd experienced before. And I think I still have a lot of grief in me. I'm very happy that I started work quite quickly because I don't really feel ready to deal with the grief of losing Pinotta. It sits very gently below the surface, as you could probably hear it in my voice talking about it. I think there'll be a time when that grief turns to real joy and pride. And I'm looking forward to that because the grief is a sadness and it makes me feel like I lost something, and it's not a loss. It's a real, what I did was a gift for not only myself, but for the people who loved Pinotta. And when I can feel that intently, then it will be a nice time to celebrate what Pinotta was.
I mean, from my perspective, Heidi, like Pinotta was a huge success. Like, you looked after your neighbourhood for 13, 14 years. You held it so carefully. And you went out when you decided you needed to. So, yeah, I hope that I hope that there will come a time in the not too distant future when you can look back on it as a hugely successful chapter, not only in your life, but in, the history of the neighbourhood, and your customers will never forget you.
No, they won't. And it's certainly changing. It's a tide that's changing. The closing did make me feel very unsuccessful. I was using the word failure at the time, but that was definitely not what it was. I sustained as much as I could for as long as I could, and then it was taking a personal toll on me. It wasn't that Pinotta wasn't great, it's that I wasn't great, which is a real difference. And I think now that I'm separating myself from Pinotta, I can put Pinotta in the success category and me in the tired category, and let's just fix that. And once I have, Pinotta will just be this enormous ball of joy that I did for a long time, that it transformed my life. The way I go through the world these days is such a different way than I did 14 years ago, when I was a lot shyer and a lot quieter and less. I guess I've reached more of my potential, and I can hold my head quite high because of that.
Oh, you definitely should. I remember when we spoke a year ago when I was writing about Pinotta, and you told me you'd had one career. You were a graphic designer and art director, and you wanted something. You weren't quite satisfied. You wanted a career where you could focus on relationships more. And yeah, you found yourself in a restaurant, and you said such beautiful things. Like, I'm going to read a little bit out because it was so lovely. You said, I'll quote you. I realize what I'm capable of. I've loved having a restaurant. It's made me feel like a complete person. I see myself as a new person, and I found my place in the world. It allows me to be generous and kind. I'm good at taking care of people. My job is taking care of staff and customers, often at the expense of the business. I was always a bit insecure about myself, but having the restaurant has allowed me to find security and confidence in who I am as a person. I feel connected to neighbourhood community, part of this strip. It takes me back to a small country town on a farm where I grew up. This job reminds me of that, a very simple way of life. It's about the people around you.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say. Can't believe those words were mine. It made me almost cry.
Well, it's so beautiful. I mean, I'm almost crying too, because I think we're really at the heart of what hospitality is, and not only what it gives to a community, but what it can give to the people who create it every day, who make lists in the middle of the night in their dreams and then get up and enact them all and tick stuff off, and never everything, but enough to make people, feel warm and beautiful and looked after.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful job to be able to do. I still feel incredibly blessed that I have managed that. Yeah, I do. And hopefully I can continue to create some of that wherever I go. It certainly is the drive, continues to be the drive of why I do what I do.
Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah,
so let's
thanks,
take
Jenny.
a deep breath, each of us. And, let's flip to cafes and talk about the very different rhythm of Ophelia, and also, the fact that Ophelia is a cafe that has started doing nights, which is a little bit of a phenomenon these days. But tell me about the different rhythm that you're finding in there at Ophelia.
It is. Cafe work is incredibly different. And these guys have brought me in here to assist with the opening of nights, because obviously that's a unique skill set of mine. Coming in and doing, the first week I sort of just came in and did the days, and it's such a different style of service. It's quicker, it's snappier. Customers come in knowing what they want. They know they're going to have a breakfast plate and this coffee and maybe a juice, and they've got half an hour because they've got to be somewhere, or the kids are running around and it's a moment to get some hot milk into them so they have an afternoon nap. There's always a time frame and a reason and a purpose for customers coming into a cafe, and they direct what you do for them. And I think nighttime service, restaurant service, and I've been trying to teach new staff this, it's about a customer's experience, and you give that to them. You curate an evening for them. It's a very different style of dining. It's a very different style of service. It's something that you hope people will walk away having had a greater moment than what they expected. And that I think is the ultimate difference between the two. Ophelia is an amazing breakfast lunch place, and I think we will actually be a really wonderful, I think we already are a really wonderful nighttime place. We've only been doing it for a month, but our Tuesday nights where we're offer the $20 pasta, we're seating the restaurant 3 times. Like, it's phenomenal in the middle of winter, and people are excited and energised by what we're doing. They're off to see a movie next door, and so some people are on a really prescribed time frame, but we do still get to direct a little bit of that time with them. And then the Friday, Saturday nights are more a la carte. So I'm getting a bit more of that Pinotta energy in for that. And I think this space here, it has really been designed to be a nighttime space. So it's wonderful for me to be a part of helping the owners of Ophelia see their intent, what they had planned for it, come to fruition. It feels like a very generous thing that I can assist them with. And I think this is going to be amazing. And I look forward to more nights here.
That's amazing. You're turning it 3 times. That's crazy.
It's
I'm
like
so happy
phenomenal.
to hear that. So
yeah,
good.
I mean, I'm run off my feet. I'm definitely doing my steps every day and using my brain in new ways. But it's exciting. And I think it's what we're doing is it's a new kind of restaurant hospitality. I think it's not cafe based. It's certainly not that, but it is responding to what people are looking for at the moment. And I think if you look at the dining scene, there are amazing restaurants in Melbourne, but there's been this influx of pub culture where people are dining out at the pub because it's the more affordable option. And that's a wonderful thing because people need to be able to go out and go somewhere. But what this place has done, what Ophelia has done, is recognised what that pub culture, what that intent is, what people are looking for. And it is affordable. There's an affordableness that we need in society right now, and Ophelia will be able to deliver that. And I think they do it in a very well curated space with a beautifully put together menu and a snappy little wine list for the minute, but I will be addressing that as well. And it just kind of, it's what people are asking for. And that's nice to be in a place where I can deliver what people are asking for rather than running around trying to work out what it is that I'm doing right or wrong, because I'm in a place where people expected a certain something from Pinotta and that was all I could ever deliver. It's a different thing to be able to respond to what people want and know that you're getting it right.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Is it hard to flip a space from cafe to restaurant? Like, is it like, I sort of imagine it as, when I go overseas and, traffic's on the right, it's like I almost have this physical switch in my brain that I need to find and flick. Is it like that?
It is a bit like that. It's so hard to go from, I'll work a night in the restaurant downstairs and then I'm sitting upstairs in the office, that's where I am. I'll work a night during the dinner service and then wake up early to come and do the cafe service. And my brain just hasn't quite switched to the pace that cafe service is frenetic, it's frantic. It's, your brain has to operate at a slightly different level. It's less calm. It's kind of like everyone's there all at once. We have a lineup out the door at Ophelia on the weekend for people waiting for breakfast. It's an extraordinary thing to manage the intensity of that. In terms of flipping the space around, it's actually quite straightforward. It's a change of lighting and glassware and, cutlery and all those little nuances and candles on tables. But from the service point of view, as a mental leap, I find I have to be quite agile, and that's probably the hardest thing I'm dealing with here is being a restaurant person and speeding up my service for the cafe in the day. It's quite a change. I completely get the metaphor of traffic overseas on the wrong side.
It must be interesting for customers too. It's like, you come in and grab your latte and hop on the tram in the morning, and then you come back and breathe out, slow down. Must be yeah.
But I think all the customers not all the customers. There's a really broad group of people coming to Ophelia for dinner, and they come from the neighbourhood and they come from further away. But so many people, because Ophelia gets treated like it's someone's own space. We have the regulars who come in all the time and sit at the same tables and have the same coffee, and then they come back for lunch or they come back for a slice of cake mid-afternoon, and then we see them coming in for dinner, and they have this. We always thought this space should be a nighttime venue. It's on the corner. It's got the high ceilings. It's so light, and it's so beautifully put together the way these guys have designed the space. It is built for night times. So I feel like for the customers, it's going to be familiar. It's going to feel like it was already here. It's not going to be a strange thing that's popped up all of a sudden. I think it'll end up being that we always did nights, and was there a time when we didn't? I think that's where it's going to head.
I love that. I think, often I speak to people at the beginning of building a restaurant, and that there is that looking at a space and asking it what it wants to be. And then you sort of listen and guide and tweak and so interesting. So Heidi, I think you're a great example of the different ways that a hospitality career can take a person. You've leapt in, created something, you're now doing something else. What would you say to people who are considering hospitality as a a career, or perhaps even to the parents who are wondering if their kids have chosen wisely?
I think hospitality is, as with any career, it can be a very difficult career to have. I think I would always advise people to think long and hard about why they're choosing to do it. I think anyone who works in hospitality generally is doing it because they love the gift of giving an experience, a moment. They have a love of food, of wine, of sharing. They're people who nurture and want to provide warm, safe places for people. And that's a really wonderful thing. If you're looking at going into hospitality as a financial career, then there's probably a whole other list of things you need to be across. You'd want to have your accounting, maths brain like well in check, and mine's, a little bit hit and miss some days of the week. As a career, I think it's one of the most rewarding things you can do, but also it has its ups and downs. It's no particular straight road that you hop on and you go from point A, B to C and all of a sudden you're at D. It will take you in directions you don't expect. It will take you to places you didn't know you wanted to go to. It will show you things about yourself that you didn't realise you could do. I think you shouldn't shy away from hospitality as a career. I think it is an engaging, dynamic, wonderful space to be in. You'll never, ever be away from family if you work in hospitality because the people you work with become yours for life. That's a real gift.
What do you love about what you do?
I love all the things about it, I think. It's the people. I think I always come back to the people. I was hosting the floor last night and I still managed to pick up a baby and carry it for 5 minutes so its parents could have dinner. They only had half an hour. They were in and out. Little moments like that, you just get to give people things they don't know that they want or need. You get to just surprise people and in turn surprise yourself. I think I just enjoy the sharingness of hospitality. It's all inclusive. You bring people in and you send people out. It just suits me.
Wow, Heidi, we're so lucky that you're doing it. Thank you so much for chatting today, sharing your story. I think it's really so beautiful and meaningful and deep and a bit raw. There's just so much. And, I'd love to stay in touch as the journey continues. But hopefully I can sneak in for a pasta one day. Sounds like it's hard to get a table.
No, we'll always have a table for you, but I really appreciate the conversation today. It's been a really lovely thing to chat about.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Danny Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.